We salute soccer's volunteers. The Club World Cup is finally done, and 7 new teams in USL 1. Is it too many? That and more on Monday's Morning Kick-Around. Hello, and welcome to the show. The sound of Franz Peckenpower means just one thing. You have found your way to Morning Kick-Around, where we cover the world's favorite game from the world's favorite country, coming to you live each Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm Robert Kerr. He's Jason Davis. How we all doing?
I'm good. Happy Monday to everybody. Happy Club World Cup is over day. Happy. What are we doing? It's summer. You do want to celebrate something, which we're going to get into in long balls, which I think is a nice thing here in the summer. I do feel like there's a little bit of a letdown now. Gold Cup is over. Club World Cup is over. MLS. I did watch some MLS this weekend. I actually feel like maybe I can engage with MLS more now, Robert, because there's not other stuff going on. So this is a transitional moment for us here, I think, in the second week of July.
The summer of soccer that many didn't even ask for. I think we could classify it as. It could well be that one, but there was lots of going on. But yeah, we will head into this transitional period here with another fantastic episode of Morning Kick-Around. Thank you for joining us here this morning. If you're watching now and that subscribe button under the window hasn't been clicked yet, do so now. Join the nearly 2,900 others that have subscribed to Morning Kick-Around. And if you've already done that and you want to kick it up a notch, become an MK Ultra, subscribe, then become a member. $3.99 a month allows you to be a member. You get access to the Discord server, lots of great threads on topics such as local ball, MLS, the national teams, and more. Yeah. Really enjoying the introduction sections, the Soccerholic confessionals, as I've started to think about it as.
And I need to check in on look, I'm holding it up right now. I got to check in on the Discord. I need to see what's going on with the swap meet. There's a swap meet channel that I created because I figure people got soccer stuff that maybe they don't want anymore and they can trade it for other soccer stuff. I have a lot, as you can see, a lot of this is just like a small selection of my soccer stuff, and I will happily send you something from my collection if you ask. That's all you got to do. Become a member. Ask in the Swap Meet channel. Tell me your address. I will send you something. That's the Morning Kick-Around promise right there, Rob.
Yeah, don't be bamboozled by Jason sending out stuff. He's actually needs to de-hoarder his soccer collection, but this is just a very clever and generous guys for all that. But in addition to your memberships, you get the Discord, which has the Swap Meet in amongst the topics. You also get early access to videos, bonus content, and more. Just $3.99 a month. If you want to support the show outside of the YouTube sphere, coffee.com/morningkickaround. We have a bit of fundraising for some specific goals on there. Thank you to anyone who has supported via coffee or the membership option on YouTube. Thank you so much. You want to follow along on social media at mkickaround on X, Instagram, Blue Sky. You can write us an email, morningkickaround@gmail.com, or find us as a podcast on your favorite podcast platform. All right, you ready for some segments?
Sure, let's go. Let's dive in.
Monday's long balls on Morning Kick-Around. Here we go. Here we go. Long balls here on Monday, July 14th. I'm Robert. He's Jason. We're going to start the show to salute to the volunteers and the all those folks making summer soccer happen. Middle of July, the summer soccer season is just about all wrapped up. In the USL 244 teams, 35 teams remain active in the playoffs. So there are interns, staffers, coaches, fans, everyone making summer league happen. Salute to you. It's sometimes awesome opportunity, and you get a lot of personal rewards, but not often fiscal or otherwise. So there's a lot of hot, sweaty days, setting things up, coordinating things, trying to do the grind of getting partnerships, explaining to sponsors what summer soccer is, and just sweating through it and appreciating doing things for the love of the game. People trying to make careers, extend their careers, or prop up the careers of others. People spending hours of their summer to put forth making these games happen, sometimes with thousands. We've talked to some teams getting thousands into these summer league games, and sometimes just a couple dozen folks out there. So salute to the hordes of volunteer staffs, coaches, fans making summer league happen.
Yeah, let's not be elitist here. I know you work with a summer league team in Oakland County in Michigan, so you have a direct connection. You are the media maven for Oakland County, right? Is that what your title is, Rob? Is that
I don't know if anyone's referring to me as a maven. I am the media director of Oakland County FC, and I have to say, we're going to try to get him on one of the shows later this week, but substitute goalie, I didn't even have anything to do with this, but we clipped up the phantom bicycle kick from substitute goalkeeper Finn Jirac. If you've consumed any kind of soccer media in the last week and a half, you may have seen the most so close bicycle kick, but I didn't even have anything to do with that. I got to salute someone else. That's Nick Morana. Cut that one up, and that one's gone over 2 million views. So I can't even claim to be the purveyor of the highest viewed media.
But you are. But if not for your work, maybe there isn't a structure in place to deliver the viral moment from the bicycle kick that wasn't. Which, that's hilarious to me that went viral. I guess it's just, wow, good effort, guy, even though it clearly, it did not work out for him. Yeah, I wanted to say, just like for people, maybe for our listeners, or for people who aren't kind of engaged with summer soccer in America, whether it's NPSL, UPSL, USL League 2, like whatever it is. And UPSL is not always summer, but my point is like lower level adult soccer, right? That's what we're talking about here. Semi-pro, college extensions, seasons for kids to play games, that kind of stuff. If not for the volunteers, if you want to find a way to connect this to sort of higher level soccer in America at this point, first of all, lots of people in the 80s and 90s would have had nowhere to play if none of this existed. And we would have not probably gotten decent soccer players to populate our professional leagues that we now have and take for granted. But take a, for example, Detroit City FC or Chattanooga, right? These are now professional, Chattanooga FC, clearly, professional outfits that built to being professional from being amateur short summer season clubs. And the reason they were even able to be successful as short summer season clubs and get attention and build to being professional is because people volunteered.
Yep.
And people worked with the teams, and people did stuff like social media or taking photos or doing game day stuff. I mean, obviously you need people to staff stadiums, and sometimes these teams, they're not making much money. So how much are they paying out when people, when they need people to work this stuff? So I think that this is awesome, that this is a moment where we can celebrate those people, and particularly when, as our soccer culture develops, Rob, it becomes easier and easier to only focus on the top levels of the sport in this country.
And that's one of the beautiful things about this moment that you and I are doing this show in, is USL 2, and those teams have actually somewhat of a pathway to professionalism if they wanted to now more than ever. And teams, like you said, the Chattanoogas and the Detroits of the world kind of proved that is kind of a way that is possible with enough gumption and resources and support, both inside staffs, volunteers, and fans. And when all those things come together, it's beautiful, but it is a lot of work. And in the summer, it's a lot of hot, sweaty Saturdays, out there, mostly high school stadiums, doing all that dirty work that may or may not be appreciated. So the 2025 Summer Soccer League, mostly wrapping up. I'm sure we will maybe touch on maybe some of the postseason national playoff situations for those. Those can be exciting in their singularity, but the hundreds of teams wrapped up their seasons this weekend, and an end of an era. It's a short, intense season. It is bittersweet. You want it to keep going. I get to live my best life for about 3-4 months a year, and then if it wasn't for this would be like the day after Christmas. Like, what do you look forward to next? But at least I get to slip morning kick around here.
Yeah, well, and look, we don't, not every one of these teams is has ambition to do more than what they're already doing. A lot of these teams are passion projects for the people that are behind the scenes, the owners, the people, who obviously organize a lot of this. And you'll run into people, if you engage with this world, that are just true believers in the sport, in developing talent, all those things, Rob, right? And some of these teams they're going to stay what they are. But there are some teams that perhaps have a future like Detroit City or like Chattanooga FC. And I know we talked to Michael Hitchcock and did an interview video with him, and he's behind some high-level amateur clubs that are bringing in big attendance numbers in places like Annapolis. We touched on the idea of, should these clubs grow beyond what their current situation is. And again, I think that's fascinating, because if we as American soccer fans want to populate the map with professional teams that then can have academies, which can then develop players, which can then help us maybe one day win a World Cup, these teams are sort of they're the seeds in the ground. And it's possible some of them will grow into something pretty remarkable.
Thank you all for spending those long-term hours through the summer to make that happen. And so, summer soccer, salute. Long ball number 2, going to a whole different end of the game. At the very top, would you call it the very top of the pyramid, the global game, and the Club World Cup wrapped up, and Chelsea got to wear the shirt saying World Champions, which I don't know. That was a little jarring, though. The Club World Cup winners having World Champions on the back. I had to. That gave me like a pang of anxiety when I saw that. But Chelsea won 3-0, surprisingly, over PSG.
I do want to talk about some of the extra stuff around.
There's a lot of extra.
There's a lot of extra stuff, and we're going to have Jack Grimse on the show in a bit, and he's a content creator and a guy on the internet who can help us kind of break down some of the weirdness of the Club World Cup, I think, later on. But yeah, the World Champion 25 shirts that Chelsea were donning were quite a choice. I'll say that. But you look, they beat the pants off of PSG. They were better. They were better than PSG, and I didn't see that coming. Did you see that coming, Rob? Did you see PSG after what they had done? After how they had mauled everybody else except for Botafogo in this tournament? Did you see them getting trounced by the Conference League champions, Chelsea? I didn't.
No, I didn't worry about that at all. We actually had an end-of-season event yesterday for Oakland County, and so I wasn't even worried about the overlap of it. I just assumed a PSG win, but that when I checked the score at the end of it, I was pretty surprised to see that, and watching the highlights, it looked like a routing. It almost looked like a mirror image of what PSG did to Real Madrid.
Yeah. That it did feel like the roles were flipped there. I did one of those things. I'm like, all right, I had to run some errands yesterday. Sunday is, a day for errands and family stuff. And I knew I wanted to see at least the second half of this game. Like, I'm going to get home for the second half. Let me go on FOTMob and check my 3-0 Chelsea. What? And obviously Cole Palmer had himself a day. I do wonder about, what this means for Cole Palmer's star power outside of the Premier League and the Chelsea world. We'll see. But give Enzo Maresca and his team credit. Like, they took apart PSG. They figured out where the spaces were. Obviously, Cole Palmer was on target with 2 of his shots, which both of those were world-class finishes. I mean, they were that level of quality. So you give Chelsea credit. They defended well. I mean, there were a bunch of moments when it looked like maybe PSG could have gotten back into that game. And one thing that has sort of dogged Chelsea all year long, even as they got their Champions League spot, even as they won the Champions League, is that Robert Sanchez was kind of a mess back there at times, and he was very good yesterday. He needed to be good, and he was very good.
Donnarumma also supplying the highlight reel with quite a few outstanding saves. He got involved in the afters as well, which I'm sure we'll get to at some point. But going to the Cole Palmer, he got his shot back. He's kind of burst onto the scene the first half of the year. He has just like a very unique. The ball comes off his left foot, a little bit different than it does a lot of people. I don't know if it's just like kind of a. This may not be the technical term, but he's got a scoopy look to his shot, where it kind of scoops around and just has the natural curve right off the boot. And it took him a couple shots to get warmed up, but then he hit 2 in a row from just about the same exact spot, drifting across the top of the box. And that went away that second half of the Premier League season. the Scoopy shot's back though in full effect, and I'm curious to see if Chelsea can bring their world champion status and put that form into the Premier League.
I'm very much looking forward to the column inches and debates that are going to be had now, especially in European environments and English environments, over that whole world champion thing versus PSG's Champions League title, right? And who's the best team? No one's going to say Chelsea's the best team in the world. No matter what they did in this tournament, no one's going to say they're the best team in the world. And yet, if you are just going on who beat whom at what, there it is right there. Chelsea took apart PSG. If PSG had backed their way into this final somehow, if they had won via penalties, if it had been close in any of their knockout round games, if they had been pushed to the limit, if they'd won via an own goal or a penalty or something like that, Rob, then you might say oh, okay, well, whatever. PSG was good, but they didn't set themselves up as the best team in the world, the best team we've seen. I mean, I'm on the radio last week and we're going, is this the best team since Barcelona 2012? We're doing that kind of comparison. And then Chelsea was like, we ain't having it. We're not having it at all. That's. And I do want to address some of this other stuff in the chat. First of all, good morning to Parker. Shout out to one of our MK Ultras. This is going to come up. Nate saying Trump taking up 40% of the main stage and Cole Palmer's reaction as classic entertainment. I will say this. Johnny tried to move the president. He tried.
Yeah, he gave him the old finger wag. Come on over. And no.
Yeah. He kept yelling. He kept kind of saying, Donald, let's go. The man did not want to move. Cole Palmer will never be a star with that haircut.
I mean, original Brazilian Ronaldo had his share of bad haircuts. Very famous.
This is the thing. The haircut is cool if the person behind it can make it cool. By force of will, Cole Palmer could push that haircut into it's fine, it's good, it's a good. I just think Cole Palmer has other things about him that don't lend to, he's going to force a way to make that haircut work. I think, I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about it a little bit later. I don't want to be too mean to Cole Palmer, who is a world-class footballer. But there's some stuff about him, Rob, that I find strange and tough to kind of appreciate.
I think the way to classify him, Cole Palmer, is he's cut from his own cloth would be a way to describe him. But I did want to note that you're talking about how is England going to react to the world champion and all that stuff. So the English media that was very dismissive of the tournament. None of the major broadcasters put in any real bids to show the tournament. And just the general sentiment, at least from the non-Chelsea folks as the tournament wore on, was very negative. Will the media tone change to the Club World Cup over there now that the English team won it?
It's a good question. I don't know. I don't know. I think it's partly about the relationship with Chelsea and this version of Chelsea and the world of Todd Bowley's Chelsea. I mean, it's not just Todd Bowley's Chelsea, but that's how the English media paints it, because it's a useful whipping boy, the American in charge at Chelsea, and all the money he spent, and all the problems that they've had. Now, again, they eventually found a way to succeed, and this is a good point. Riverside Grove pointing out, guess which three teams spent the most money in world football the last 3 years? Chelsea, Manchester United, PSG, in that order. Obviously, Man United has not made it work for them, but PSG has won the UEFA Champions League, and now Chelsea has won the Club World Cup, and obviously earned their way back into the Champions League. And off of this, I imagine lots of people will be making them a favorite, or at least a contender to win a Premier League title this year. I mean, that's another leap, but they're going to be in that conversation. And so when you talk about, Chelsea and the money and the American and the dumb spending and the selling of the women's team to the club so they can make the books work and all that stuff, it's a very weird relationship, I think. And I don't know. It's obviously easy to say, well, look, this proves something about the Premier League, even though the Premier League didn't get it done in the actual Champions League. Or Manchester City loses to Al Hilal, much to the surprise of everybody. I don't know. I still think there's too much to be proven about this competition for anybody in England, despite having an English team win it, to take it seriously, Robert.
Yeah, no doubt. Moving along to long ball number 3 here on Monday, July 14th, and kind of our long balls are kind of the newsy segments, but this order kind of demonstrates how Morning Kick Around operates. We started off with a salute to grassroots summer soccer volunteers. Then we went to the top of the pyramid, talking Club World Cup on American shores. But here we'll return to, let's say, the middle ground, the Division I professional domestically. We'll talk at Major League Soccer and Leo Messi, a guy we've definitely heard of, not participating since quite a few weeks in the Club World Cup, but back in action. And since he returned to MLS action, he can't stop scoring braces.
Yeah, 5 now with multiple goals for Lionel Messi in Major League Soccer. I will say it helps when the goalkeeper gives you the ball. The opposing goalkeeper just says, like, here you go, Joe Willis, trying to play out of the back, makes a pretty poor decision with the ball and gives Lionel Messi an opportunity to finish, which he took. I don't know what this means. Nashville's still a good team. I mean, they're still going to be a contender for something, maybe an MLS Cup final. But Miami is proving that they're not going to just go away. I mean, the challenges they have with their schedule and coming off of the Club World Cup experience, I think that's still something that you worry about, I guess, if you're an Inter Miami fan. The transfer window for Major League Soccer, the secondary window, does not open until late this month, and you only end up with 9 post window game, or 9 games once the window opens for that player to make a difference in the regular season. Now Miami's up to 5th in the Eastern Conference, but again, it is spread out because of the Club World Cup, but they haven't lost in a while in the league, and they still have 3 games in hand on everybody ahead of them. So what is possible? Is Inter Miami on the path to winning that points title again, being a Supporter Shield winner? I don't know. And you do wonder if Javier Mascherano has to be careful. Messi keeps playing 90 minutes. He keeps playing full games despite his age and despite all the soccer that they have been involved with. Like, it's kind of crazy, don't you think? That and I guess it just says that if Messi wants to play, he plays. Doesn't matter who the coach is. And I think it was pointed out maybe by Matt Doyle on Blue Sky that the guy who did try to manage Messi's minutes, Tata Martino, is no longer there. Meanwhile, his boy, his fellow Argentino, Javier Mascherano, is like, nah, brother, you can play as much as, just stay out there, Leo. It's okay. It's okay.
If you want to play, you play. And that 5th, 6th brace in a row, Inter Miami 2, Nashville 1, a whole full schedule of Major League Soccer games over the weekend. Looking at the table, kind of tuning back in, I can't lie that, focus has been obscured by the Gold Cup and with the Club World Cup and local soccer, to be fair, in my case. But Philadelphia, top spot in the East, but for having a quote-unquote bad start to the season with the new coaching and the reshuffling of the deck in Miami, with the games in hand, they could well be in first place. I mean, the talk of their downfalls maybe been a little bit exaggerated.
Well, look, I think last year showed that if you're excellent during the regular season and you win the points title, it doesn't mean anything in the playoffs, right? Obviously, that was Miami's problem, and this is what I'm interested in. Whether or not Mascherano is going to have a different approach to the latter half of the season, the latter end of the season, because last year it didn't go well when they went up against Atlanta, right? So that part is interesting to me. I don't know if there's going to be a difference in the way they handle things, or if they're going to bring in anybody, if they can, under the budget, to bring anybody. I just think this is a season that is proving that MLS is extremely competitive. Philly's at the top of the table, combined table right now on 43 points after bouncing back. They had 2 losses in a row and they had dropped down to 3rd. They beat the Red Bulls. They go back top. Cincinnati loses to Columbus in the Hellas Real Derby match 4-2 in their own building. They're in 2nd place behind Philly by a point. Nashville loses to Inter Miami, so they're now in 3rd. Columbus, with their win, and they haven't lost in a while, after a little bit of a bump, they're up to 41 points, and they're in 4th. And I think that was a statement win over Cincinnati. Yeah, again, we talked about Miami, who's in 5th and 3 points back of Columbus, but has games in hand on everybody. I do think there's a gap between those 5 teams and everybody else in the East, which is Orlando, NYCFC, Red Bull, Charlotte, Chicago, New England. These are all not the best teams. Out West, it's a little different. Like, I don't know who's good. San Diego is continuing to play good enough to be in first. They jumped over Vancouver a couple weeks ago or a week ago. Now they're in first. Are they going to be Are they going to stick that out? Are they going to be that good the rest of the way to win the West or be the top seed in the West? Can they challenge for a supporter shield? Right, they're 1 point off right now in terms of the supporter shield race. I think Minnesota United is good. And by the way, Minnesota United, well, they're pretty good, and they have this reputation for being incredibly aggressive on set pieces. There's a very good article by John Mueller at the Guardian that outlines how Minnesota United is the most aggressive set piece taking team in the world, and this includes long throw-ins. They are like a massive outlier in terms of throwing the ball into the box whenever possible and taking every free kick they have and putting it in the box. So where most teams will maybe get a restart in their own half and, short pass and try to maintain possession, they'll bring the goalkeeper up and they'll lump it in the box and they'll just put pressure on the defenders to figure out how to deal with this stuff. I think that's a fascinating thing. Vancouver has hit some bumps. Obviously, the Gold Cup was not kind to Vancouver because they were missing some important players during that period, Rob. So, that can they get back to it with everybody back and potentially healthy? Seattle, Portland, LAFC. I mean, I don't know. You don't know to make of anybody else in the Western Conference right now. Again, San Diego is proving that they belong in the conversation for the best team in the league, which is a surprise. And yes, Nate is correct. Nobody saw that coming. Nobody. And could they be a Chicago Fire circa 1998 kind of story? We shall see.
Just like blocking or knocking the barn doors down. And yeah, surprise of the season, some pretty familiar teams near the top. I'd say both conference leaders are a bit of a surprise coming in. It's pretty dour sort of camp in Philadelphia leading into the season with the change in coaching. And then top in the West, San Diego, people didn't see that coming. No one saw Vancouver being in touching distance of the top either. So kind of an odd 2025 season thus far, over halfway.
Yeah, well, let me also acknowledge some of the news that came out since you and I were last together, and that's that Troy Lesesne was fired by DC United after the Open Cup loss, although everybody who tracks DC and follows that team and covers them, Stephen Goff and other people, say that was not the reason he was fired, was not the Open Cup loss. He was fired because they were looking to fire him for a while, and they identified a replacement for him in the last couple of days. Renee Weiler is coming in. Apparently, I think that's the reports. I'm not sure if that is officially official, meaning announced by the team. But that's the next coach to go. You wonder if there's anybody else who might be on the hot seat. I do think things have gone really sour in New England under Caleb Porter, and you wonder if he's overstaying his welcome. Lots of teams have already made decisions at the bottom of the table in each conference. I hope Eric Quill figures it out because I don't want to see him lose his job in Dallas, although I think Dallas is a team that doesn't really want to make a change unless they absolutely, absolutely have to. And they're going through a weird transitional period anyway. So I don't know. It's that part, right? The hot seat and whether or not there is enough pressure on MLS managers is always a question. I think that has gone up in recent years. I don't know the number this year compared to say last year, the year before, but I do think more clubs are willing to make changes when things are not going the way they want.
Further look at MLS probably come in the next week or two as the focus shifts after these big international tournaments are done. But until we get to our next segment, let you guys know if you're watching this now, haven't hit subscribe, what you waiting for? Closing in on 2,900 subscribers to the channel, so you can be the next one. If you want to kick up your support just a notch, $3.99 a month, become an MK Ultra A subscriber to the channel, and you get access to the Discord server. Great conversations going on there about all the different levels of American soccer. You can also support on coffee.com/morningkickaround, which has some specific goals and fundraiser targets in mind over there. Thank you to everyone and anyone who has chipped in, whether through memberships or through the coffee. Shout out to Soccer Night in Detroit saying he re-upped for his second month of membership. So thank you so much there. If you want to follow along on social media at mkickaround, X, Instagram, Blue Sky, you can write us an email, morningkickaround@gmail.com, or look us up on your favorite podcast platform, Morning Kick Around, to listen to us as a podcast. All right, we're going to catch our breath and come right back with our big question with the help of Jack Grimse here on Morning Kick Around. Welcome on in. This is the big question here for Monday, July 14th, the day after the Club World Cup ended. Want to ask the big question of the day. Now that it's over, was the Club World Cup a success? And to delve into this conversation and question, joined by content creator Jack Grimse. Welcome in. Thank you for joining us here on Morning Kickaround, sir.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate you guys having me. Excited to be here. Excited about what you're doing, helping grow the game over in the States. It's crazy. The Club World Cup just wrapped up, and the World Cup is like less than a year away. So I think everybody's kind of thinking about that. That's like the big question, big picture thing. Is the sport growing in America? I've seen some polls. Are you more excited about the World Cup now since the Club World Cup has happened? And I think for some reasons I am, and for some reasons I still am, but I can see why some people would not be. Probably like the traffic, or I've seen all those TikToks of people running to MetLife Stadium as the game started, and there's just huge traffic. I've been there. I've been on a bus that died on the way to East Rutherford. It was actually for the Madrid derby, the ICC 2019, when I was working that. But luckily, they got it restarted and was still there in plenty of time. But there's so much going on. And was the Club World Cup a success, I guess? Was that your question?
Yes,
depends who you ask. Like for Chelsea, they got a huge bailout. They fixed their finances during this summer, which maybe this has given them the chance. I heard you guys talking a little bit ago. It will propel them on in the Premier League. But yeah, sorry, I'm not going to hog.
Well, no, it's interesting you bring that up. Like, did they fix their finances, or did they just massage their finances in a way that means regulators aren't going to drop the hammer on them? I don't know. We don't have to get into the weeds of that, Jack. I mean, this is and I would love to get your perspective on this, as somebody who is engaged in bringing fans together, reaching out to fans on behalf of various clubs and organizations and things like that. Like in your job, is it difficult to sort of dodge some of the landmines that football has created for us? That when we talk about financial fair play and PSR and some of the shadiness of FIFA and
human rights.
The human rights elements are part of that World Cup conversation, right?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty funny that Sepp Blatter was weighing in about the moral state of the game recently, because he's certainly one to talk. So whether or not the game is making these landmines and these headaches and pitfalls for ourselves, that's something that there's only so much we can control. So, I like to focus a little bit more on the positive side of the game, some of the fans that are being brought together, some of these opportunities to, whether it's this summer to see some of your favorite players up close in America, because that's not something we always get a chance to do, or some of the amazing stories that are happening in our country, in our own backyard, like Vermont Green. And I heard you guys talking a little bit both earlier today and other days about these summer teams and how that really can be growing the game on a grassroots level, probably more so than someone who's a huge Cole Palmer fanboy that just gets to see Cole for 2 seconds at training. What are these communities? What is it like being a season ticket holder, even if it's for only 8 matches a year?
Do you think that do you think that there's a gap? Do you think there's a disconnect between sort of fans who engage with the game at the highest levels, largely through social media, largely through, video clips or whatever? I mean, I've been at these conferences where people talk about how younger fans engage with the game in a different way than older fans did, Jack. I mean, do you think there's and then again, grassroots versus, we're talking about a team that spent £1 billion on their squad and they win a Club World Cup. And then obviously, we've got Robert, who works with a team that's got some college kids just wanting to play some extra soccer in the summer. And I don't know, is there a gap between those communities, or do you think we're all kind of in the same group?
Maybe we're in the same, I don't know, village is not a right word for it, probably because some of it is so big, but we're in the same place, but maybe we're in the same movie theater and we're just seeing different films, and some people are seeing a little indie film and some people are seeing the huge F1 in IMAX 4D. So maybe that's a good analogy for it. But I think it's great because like now soccer is getting to a place where there is almost something for everyone. There are some Premier League fans that probably don't watch any games and they consume highlights, or they just follow transfers, or they're just playing FIFA Ultimate Team and building their super squads. But there are some people who are not going to watch any Premier League games and they're going to go out to support their local team. And Could those people meet and have a meaningful conversation about the game? Probably to some extent, but some of it is about the experience. Some of it is, just the daily news cycle grind and what's the water cooler chat, like what's important to you. So I think it's kind of cool how there's those different avenues.
From your perspective, from the work that you're doing, what have been some of the more compelling threads or conversations or topics that you've enjoyed in your side?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. I think there's so many different ways I could go with this, but something I was doing was helping Aston Villa launch their USA Instagram account, and every year there's a North America meetup for fan clubs across the country. So whether you're supporters in Chicago, New York, or Boston, San Diego, San Francisco, every year all these people are coming to one fan club's home bar, whether that's in Seattle, it was a couple years ago, Toronto, this year was in Charlotte. So kind of meeting everybody, hearing their stories, whether they're third generation Brummie or somebody who's, just from Ohio that started playing with Aston Villa and FIFA and is now following the club very passionately. Like for me, it's really cool to see how that fandom develops organically, especially for me. Like growing up, I was really into American sports, played soccer until I was 10, but didn't really have any family connections, didn't understand the game, didn't understand the tactics, didn't understand why I had to keep running around, never got to the ball, and it was like 90 degrees out. I'm like, I'm just gonna stick with baseball where I can actually hit this thing. So, seeing how the game develops, seeing people's individual stories and connections, and really how like the rest of the world consumes this sport is really cool.
I think that, from my perspective, very similar to you. Grew up, played a little bit of soccer. Family didn't have any connection to it. Kind of dropped the thread later on because I was focused on baseball and other things. But when I think about, I used to do a radio show that was American soccer focused. And what I would say sometimes is that even if I was talking about the Premier League, or even if I was talking about something that happened outside the United States, it's still American soccer in the sense that there are fans of every type of soccer that are living this country in the United States of America. We have a representation for pretty much every league you could think of, right? Which I think is incredible. It does create, again, problems maybe communicating between these groups or connecting them at times. I do also think that we have a division, Jack, between Spanish-speaking soccer fans and English-speaking soccer fans in America.
I mean, of course, like Liga MX, people are always surprised when I say, what's the most watched league in the United States? And it's probably primarily when I'm talking to Europeans and they're like MLS or Premier League, and like, no, it's Liga MX.
Yeah, exactly that. And that thing about what you're saying about, connecting Aston Villa fans, the American Aston Villa community, and that part of it, like how do you see the established Villa fans responding to the new one, just since that's your direct experience in building this fan base in America? Because that soccer fans can be very gatekeepy. Even new soccer fans can be very gatekeepy about who gets to be a fan or who gets to feel connected to a club or a team.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit territorial, like I think for every club, because you see these stories of Americans coming in and buying up the tickets or something. But I don't, especially for Villa, I don't think that's a huge reality. I don't think it's like a Manchester United where there's thousands of tourists at the game every week. So my experience has been really overwhelmingly positive. People who, maybe they were listening to my podcast 10 years ago and they just wanted a different perspective, or they remember some of the darker days of the club 8 years ago or so. And, so it's been really great to meet people when I'm over there at the stadium, or there's even a group that comes to the meetup every year from Kidderminster, which is like 30 miles down the road from Birmingham. So even those people who are traditional local fans have embraced the American community, and they're like, okay, well, great. You're on the same team as us. You're supporting and following along with us. Here's some of our history, some of our lore that's only kind of been passed down verbally.
But I think, sorry, Rob, but I think some of the, maybe especially, I can speak from the American side, but I imagine this is, FC United of Manchester, which kind of came out of the Sky Sports deal and the changes that came to the Premier League in Manchester United. But this is, there may even be, and I guess you could argue that Wrexham is kind of this story in a way, even though it's obviously got big money backers and famous people behind it. But is there a reaction to sort of the globalization of the game, the way that, FIFA, UEFA, some of these organizations are acting. Maybe in the Premier League, obviously La Liga has talked about taking games outside of Spain and playing them in the United States. Like, is there a reaction to that is maybe helping people connect more locally? And even if Villa, which is a Premier League club and obviously going through a good phase of success in that league, those fans recognize, like, that's not what our club is. What our club is the local connection, the thing that brings us together as community.
Exactly. And I think that's an interesting point you raise. Are fans going to embrace modern football or look for more local, more community? And there's kind of two ways you can go. And you can go and you can watch every match on TV. You can embrace the Club World Cup, or there's some people, I don't think there's too many of them, or maybe they're just not the ones who are talking about it online because they weren't looking for that anyway, but they're going to find their local FC United of Manchester. They're going to support their 5th division side, that they can go and be a meaningful part in the community. Maybe they volunteer there. Maybe they are involved in the club, or, there's tons of ways that you can really support and make an impact at that level where you feel like just a customer. They're wringing every last drop of sweat out of you.
With to kind of turn our focus here on the American soccer conversation, the biggest news of the year outside of these tournaments and whatnot has been USL's kind of groundbreaking announcements. First, talking about the Division One announcement to try to make a parallel to Major League Soccer, and in the kind of the storm of excitement there, brought the ushered in the announcement of promotion relegation coming to the USL system. And so there has been kind of a buzz in the lower leagues, and more USL 1 teams are being created, and these smaller teams are kind of becoming some of the more interesting stories, like small pockets of excitement spread across larger parts in different places. How do you think that's going to impact your work covering the game?
I mean, if there's more soccer, that's probably a good thing, right? There's more people that are interested in the game, more advertisers, more clubs, and the ecosystem just kind of grows. But I think it's really interesting because if you look at the foundation of the sport and how the open system has allowed for the interchange and facilitation of clubs moving up and down the league ladder, you are going to face different opponents. I think that's kind of been one of the competitive foundational aspects of why the game has been so successful in Europe. And obviously, like, recognizing the history of the American soccer system, and you can't just plow in millions of dollars to start something up and then have your investment go poof. So at the same time, like, I understand why MLS has been closed, but I wonder if the open system is going to generate almost a different type of fandom that really challenges the status quo.
Let me get a little inside baseball, I guess is a good way to say it, with you, Jack, on your career, your efforts to grow your particular reach. And then obviously, I mean, like, that's all tied in, as you said, to investment in the game. And obviously with the World Cup coming in 2026, I think anybody, especially those of us who work full time in soccer, are thinking, okay, how do we get this going? Not just for ourselves, but obviously how do we sort of maximize this for American soccer? Have you seen, what is your sense of sort of when there may be a sort of a boom in attention around the sport as we get closer to 26? What is your sense for sort of how investment might change or is changing around to engage with people like you or anything else that's out there in soccer media?
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of, like, at least fan sentiment, I think it was maybe last year when I just started noticing a ton of kids wearing Messi shirts. And I'm like, it didn't happen overnight, but it almost felt like it did, because it's like, all right, the parents they were watching SportsCenter, but they weren't seeing as much of Messi. And now he's all over your TV and the kids want that Messi shirt. So, like, the attention is shifting. I think for the younger generation, I would say, like, the cool sports to follow are, like, probably soccer and F1, right? So there's like a lot of that attention that's being shifted there. And, while that audience doesn't necessarily have the spending power yet, that's what advertisers are wanting to buy. They're trying to get that attention. And, like, following up on the World Cup, it's interesting, right? Because it's like all the fandom is driven by these countries. That's why I was kind of curious about the Club World Cup. Is like, are these clubs having a strong enough pull in the US to draw these fans to the game or to draw them closer to the game? Are these national teams, we know which national teams are going to be a really big draw here. We know some of them just are not due to logistics, or even though a ton of people live here that immigrated from that country, like they just don't have as big of a presence as some others. But I don't know how that will impact the USL 1, the USL 2, these clubs that are very grassroots level compared to the shininess of France and their star-studded squad.
Yeah, certainly interesting. We'll see. Speaking of the Messi, the explosion in Messi jerseys and full kits on kids. Little kids can get away with full kits in public, as adults really can't. Yeah, I head to church on a Sunday and see kids running around in Messi shirts at church is always an interesting thing for me. Jack Grimse. Jack, tell us where we can find all your stuff that you're working on right now.
Yeah, you can find me here on YouTube, Jack Grimse. I'm also on TikTok, Instagram, Blue Sky, and yeah, so trying to, I think like you guys know, following Aston Villa from the American perspective, building my shirt collection, trying to tell some fun stories, whether they're about kits or if it's something unique that's happening in Georgia or happening in Germany. I'm just a huge fan of the game and always try to have fun with it and, engage with people authentically. I think it's really fun to hear about other people's perspectives, how they became a fan, and really what's interesting to them within the game.
Well, Jack, thank you so much for spending the time with us here on Morning Kickaround. Thank you so much for your experience and sharing your perspective of the game and the summer of soccer that was, and interested to see what you do next and how you turn your attention following the afterglow of the Club World Cup and our exploits of our summer of soccer. Before we move on, I did want to put some comments on the screen. Nate, member, MK Ultra, this show's opened my eyes to local soccer scene in the U.S. Pretty cool stuff. And then Riverside Grove local soccer will ultimately be the medium that makes soccer big in this country. Affordable, community-centered game day experience has always been what makes soccer the world's game. And you had a great analogy, Jack, before you go the movie theater. Maybe we're all going to the same multiplex. Some are seeing the big, glossy, big studio release, and others seeing independent films. And hopefully this show is the theater lobby where all of those groups meet up and discuss, and maybe they all meet and then go to the same show together eventually. But thank you, Jack. And we're going to take a quick break, come right back with the final segment of Monday's Morning Kickaround.
Yeah,
Hello, welcome on into Hot Topic here on Morning Kickaround. During one of our great interview segments last week, we talked to the boss of AV Ultra of USL 1, and during that conversation, he reminded us that 7 new teams are going to be added to the USL 1, America's third professional division, in 2026. I want to ask this question and talk about this spicy topic. Is 7 new teams in the third division too many?
Yeah, it's a lot, right? It's a lot. I mean, I guess, like, if you just take a macro approach to this, more is better, right? Like, in terms of American soccer, we have it's not that American soccer has been starved necessarily, Rob, but it's never been sort of like so much that we felt like we were meeting our potential. Does that make sense?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
even as Major League Soccer hits 30 teams, people are still like, well, there are all these other places where you could put a team for the first division. Now, is it wise to have a 30-team first division? That's maybe a different question. Should there be some sort of split? Should we be looking again? Should we have an integrated pyramid? Again, that's a big question. Maybe MLS at the top of a pyramid, et cetera, et cetera. Those are different questions. If you talk about like just do we want more teams, the answer is always going to be yes. But I guess there is a sense of like how you should do it or how you should roll it out. On the screen right now, you can see all of the 7 teams that are supposed to be launching in USL League One in 2026. Now, I believe there is at least one more team that is not on this list that will launch after 2026 or is supposed to launch after 2026. There are also, I think, some expansion projects that have maybe stalled a bit. Is that a fair way of describing it, Rob? Like we've talked about some of these on our show. Like if you go and you look at so I think there's maybe a team in Florida, another team in Florida that could pop up. These teams are confirmed, although as you can tell, that USL Eugene project does not have a badge or an identity yet. But Athletic Club Boise, we talked about this badge. This is a USL League One team launching in Boise, Idaho. Corpus Christi FC, which already plays in USL League 2 and is building a stadium, 5,000 seat capacity to move into USL League One. Fort Wayne, which is also a USL League 2 club right now. That is DeMarcus Beasley, and they're in Fort Wayne, Indiana. The Cosmos, which just got announced last week, which is going to play in Patterson, New Jersey. Fort Lauderdale United, and then Sarasota Paradise. So 2 of these teams are Florida teams. I mean, in terms of the badges, Rob, you have any thoughts on the badges before we move?
I like that there's a variety. I think Corpus Christi is very like summer league team that started in 1998 to me. I think it's fun. I mean, you never see sharks on logos too often. Obviously Cosmos with the classic. Sarasota Paradise, I can feel the ocean spray when I see that one. I like that quite a bit. Definitely kind of like an old school look without being like dated by clip art, where the Corpus Christi one might be just a touch. Boise, we went in there pretty far, and I think Fort Wayne is okay. I like that there's a bit of a variety in the shape of the badge. There's definitely not quite like there's not just a template. These are a variety of looks.
These are different approaches, right? I mean, again, I know if I saw a comment on our Boise video, somebody said I was being critical of Boise while wearing a San Diego Loyal shirt, and they weren't loyal or something, or they just had. By the way, that wasn't we were doing a critique of the San Diego Loyal badge for a club that's dead. But anyway, Boise is interesting. It's a little busy. I'm not sure about the eagle / lightning bolt going outside of the borders of the badge. That's an odd one for me. You mentioned the shark, Corpus Christi. If you have an animal and a soccer ball, it's very American. Very much appreciate that.
I'm almost surprised that star isn't on the ball itself to make it like kind of the throwback NASL ball, which so many amateur teams have.
Yeah, but I imagine that's a Texas thing, right? It's got to be a Texas thing. There's some stripes in there too, which I like how they built in the stripes so they can go with stripes on their kits. They can be so it's almost that Atletico Madrid kind of look there.
Mm-hmm.
Fort Wayne, as you said, there's a couple different elements there. The sort of clip art, very basic old. I mean, that's not an old fashioned ball. It's actually the standard hexagonal ball, but I don't know. That one's interesting. We already talked about the Cosmos. I like Fort Lauderdale. I think that one's pretty cool. I don't have any issue with that one. I mean, there's not a lot going on, but it kind of got a classic vibe to it. And as you said, Sarasota is just Sarasota's font choice is interesting to me. That's a little.
Yeah, not the easiest to read. It has a little bit of a Miami Vice vibe. Not the easiest to read, but definitely identifiable. If you saw that once, you'd probably remember that if you came across it again.
So when we talk about whether this is good or not, right? If the question here that we're approaching is, should they be expanding at this level? Again, I guess I would say beggars can't be choosers. And if you have created a level, and a lot of this hinges on whether or not USL League One is a good operation in and of itself, Rob. Like, is it a stable thing, USL League One? And I think we have some good evidence it is. If that's something you take for granted, or that's something you are sure about, then how can you say no to anybody who comes in with their expansion fee, says I can build a 5,000 seat stadium, or I've got a stadium that works for us? How do you say no to that? Now, again, if you're kind of looking at it from a top-down perspective and wondering if all these expansion fees are just lining the pockets of the people in charge at USL, you can be very cynical about that, right? And you can say, well, that's maybe not. Are they doing this just to bring? It's very much the MLS criticism, right?
Are they doing it just to add like expansion fee sort of
when
thing?
People call MLS a pyramid scheme, what they're saying is you're taking the money that comes in from new expansion teams and you're paying off the old people. Right. And that the league doesn't actually generate money on its own. It's not a money-making enterprise. It is just you're capitalizing on very, very wealthy people who want to be involved somehow because you have a scarcity element, and they're giving you $500 million or whatever the price is now, and you just use that to pay back the people who invested 10 years, 20 years ago, 30 years ago rather. And maybe there's some truth to that. I hope that's not what's happening here. Right? The thing that I'm always concerned about, Rob, is that these clubs are built to last. And I know that's hard to know when you start a club, but we can't have clubs coming and going. Again, I talked about it all the time. Like, I'm surrounded by dead soccer team memorabilia in this room that I sit in right now. And they're all American teams. And most of them they're not, I'm not talking about 50 years old. I'm talking about teams that came and went in the last 20 years. Teams that had 4 years, 5 years, 1 year in the case of the San Francisco Deltas. Like, what are we doing here?
And there's a number that gets bandied about quite a bit. Like, was it in the hundreds of teams? Was it like 178 teams or whatever have died since the early 90s? So right. the attrition rate is high, but you got to say the addition of these teams has got to be a ripple effect, and definitely put the gas in the tank when the Division One, the first division announcement came up, and the whole promotion relegation put more onus to flesh out USL League One. And I know for a few years USL League One has been desperate to fill in that third division, and to mixed degrees of success. But I feel like this push has a little bit of a different air to it, especially since a couple of these teams have been doing their thing and building a foundation in the amateur world and moving in. I just got to say shout out. I was there at Fort Wayne's very first ever game. Oakland County FC beat them on a cold, wet day in March back in 2018, or maybe recent than that. But either way, they've been kind of growing a foundation, laying some roots. They're not just a guy who said, "Hey, we're going to play at this high school stadium. Why don't you come out? Maybe you will, maybe you won't." But a cynical kind of end to the thought is 7 new ones, 5 of them, good percentage that last.
So okay, let's be fair, right? So you have Corpus Christi, you have Fort Wayne, you have Fort Lauderdale, and Sarasota. I think all of those teams are currently playing games as amateur sides in USL League 2, right? Do I have that? I think Boise is a completely new enterprise. They've never played a game. You got the new Cosmos. They've never played a game under this iteration in North Jersey, although you could argue that there's enough connective tissue to say that they relate to the old Cosmos, I guess. You could say that. USL Eugene, as far as I'm aware, is brand new with no former, no history in another league. So, look, those teams that have some infrastructure are more ready to make the leap. Now, it's a big jump, right? It's a big jump to go from USL League 2 short season summer soccer to full professional. We got to sell tickets, got to, corporate sponsorships, paying players. Obviously, that's a major thing. So I'm hopeful that everybody lasts. This is good from Riverside Grove. Can't let the fear of failure prevent growth. Clubs will die, but with pro rel, more will survive. That last part is a supposition
to be seen.
Right? We don't know. I understand believing that to be the case, but we don't know for sure. In terms of whether pro rel is driving this, I would say that certainly there are going to be teams and people who are like, "Oh, I'm intrigued more now by the fact that pro rel is coming or might come." Right? Again, that's still in the works to the USL. But there's also that barrier of professional league standards and what clubs meet those standards. And we always focus on the first division, Rob, because if USL is going to create a first division, the professional league standard there, one of them involves a 15,000 seat stadium. It also involves how financially secure your primary owner is and stuff like that. But let's just focus on the stadium because that's a tangible thing you have to have. And we're like, well, Detroit is now expanding their plan to 15,000 seats so they can meet the standard. And there are other teams that already have that. But there are places that would have to invest more money. Louisville would have to invest more money to meet a Division I standard if it holds, right? Like if there's not a renegotiation of the professional league standards by U.S. Soccer, USL is going to have to get those stadiums up to that level, and they're going to have to get some waivers. None of these teams are going to be playing in stadiums that are remotely close. So if you're like, oh, well, Pro Rel is going to open everything up, and these teams could imagine themselves playing the first division, how is that going to happen when Corpus Christi is building a soccer complex where their stadium will seat 5,000 people? Can they just add 10,000 seats? Should they get promoted to the first division? And you can't really, like, financially, you can't commit that money to something you don't know is going to happen. So I think that all of this is interesting in that regard.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. But to your point of the waivers and whatnot, and when the promotion and relegation announcement did come down from USL HQ, and all these teams are kind of throwing their hat in the ring, there was an assumption that maybe USSF would become more lenient with the waivers, both at the top all the way down, because there's a lot of teams lining up for this. And there was an assumption that there were some waivers coming, but we really haven't heard anything specific that's going to be the case.
No, I do think that's coming. I do think I do think revised standards may come. I do think waivers are going to be a thing. But why have standards if you're going to issue 50 waivers on various different elements of the professional league standards? Why even have waivers, or why even have standards? And of course, the standards have been challenged, right? That's what the NASL, part of what the NASL was doing when they went to court against US Soccer and MLS. They were challenging collusion, but also around the standards. And Eric Stover, I believe it was Eric Stover, specifically mentioned that if it was in the article that Jeff Ritter wrote for The Athletic, he mentioned that if not for the lawsuit, if not for the challenge that NASL and the Cosmos and Rocco Comiso put to US Soccer, there wouldn't probably be a USL Super League, because that's a first division league, right? And US Soccer granted that league first division status, and Stover sees that as connected to the legal challenge. That's basically like, your standards are nonsense, or you can't lock out another league from first division status because you have a relationship with a different one, right? And this gets into like what is best for American soccer, and I'm not going to say I have all the answers, right? But one thing that Rocco and the NASL said was that US Soccer was too cozy with MLS, and they were doing things to benefit MLS if that damaged NASL or damaged NASL's ability to compete at the same level. Now, is it good for any country to have two first divisions, Rob? Do you know the answer to that? Because I don't know the answer to that.
It can't be. I don't know. It's complicated because obviously we've never really seen it. But it doesn't seem like the right thing in a natural setting. Obviously, it's hard to implement the systems of other places because of antitrust and monopolization and whatnot. But it does seem like the natural flow that everyone should be playing towards the same goals, that a champion of the first division would be the champion of all, because there would be an asterisk then, like MLS, obviously it's been the only first division league for quite some time, and they can say that they are the top club team because they are the unicorn league. But so when this USL Division 1, the Premier or whatever they're going to call it, comes to fruition, there's going to be two first division winners. Doesn't feel right.
Yeah, and look, I also recognize that because of the size of the country and all of those things, that maybe it's not the end of the world. I don't know. It doesn't, as you said, there's no other place where this is a thing. Although we do have Andy saying that Brazil had multiple first divisions until 1971. That was based on the state leagues and all that stuff, which Brazil is very messy from that historically. Whether or not we can do something like that here, again, that would require splitting up leagues into various little buckets. And I don't think there's an appetite for that. That's what I mean when I talk about that we're a league first country and not a club first country. It's the leagues that establish the way things operate, not clubs who get together and say, well, what's best for us. Right? It's always the league who's dictating to the clubs, like, you do this and do that, and then you're in your league. Again, all of these teams are franchises. USL may be more liberal and open with the way clubs can operate. They're individual entities in a way that MLS teams are not individual entities because of single entity. But that doesn't mean that they're not also beholden to USL. And we have had league splits in this country, and I don't know if we want to go back down that road and all of those things. Okay, so there is the question of the stadiums, which I just brought up. And I want to bring this in. They can rent out bigger stadiums that meet the standards when they move up and down. That is a financial thing that it's not as simple as like, oh, well, we have an 8,000 seat stadium and we need a 15,000 seat stadium. Let's just go rent the stadium down the road. That is financially, that's a massive thing. right? It's just not, just don't move money from one side to the other and everything's fine, right? Obviously, if you sell tickets, you can push back against that, but don't act like it's easy and turnkey, because it's not. It's complicated. And I want this all to happen. Like, I want these clubs to thrive, and I want pro rel to work, and I want clubs to be able to move up and down the pyramid like we see in other countries, in a way that feels natural, that feels right, that isn't sort of. I don't want there to be a situation, Rob, where a team wins a league and goes, well, actually, yeah, we can't go up. Yeah, we can't. We got to stay here because we just don't got the stuff. That's, nobody wants that. That undermines promotion and relegation as a feature of the competition.
One thing that, in theory, in my mind, I've thought about in the early days, maybe the first 5 years or so of the promo rel system, maybe you can pocket a promotion. Maybe your stadium's not coming down the line for a couple years, and you don't meet those requirements. You don't get the waivers that you need. Maybe like you win the second division, and maybe like when you're ready, you're like, I accept the promotion, sir.
This is like a one-up, like an extra man in a video game. I'm just gonna put that over here, and if I need it, I'll use it later. I mean, obviously, look, again, it's a very funny idea. It's a problem if your league's filled out already. Somebody accepted when you didn't, and now the league is full. And then what are you going to punish somebody who just won the league? No, you can't go in yet because the team that won the league 2 years ago is finally ready to come up. I think there is a dream world where we have this huge number of clubs and everybody's connected, and there's this, again, it sort of it operates in the ideal way we imagine an open system to act. We are so far away from that. We have to be realistic about the steps between here and there. And we may never get there. We should work for it. We should always work towards it. By the way, that would be like a voucher. That's very funny. We should always work for it. But I just, these are interesting challenges to face, to acknowledge, even if they are hurdles that can be cleared.
And this early stages is kind of just like the foundations and stepping stones. I put a comment from Andy. Thank you for all your comments today, Andy. Like, we need like 200 more teams to be a true system, because a lot of the time when we've been talking about USL 1, everyone, there's a lot of comments saying that, this sort of level needs to be regionalized, and fair enough. And then also pulling in the same direction. So like, say there's 200 more teams, then those regional teams build into the third tier and so on up the way. So we could just be scratching the surface here, a torch in the dark cave, just inching our way towards these things, creating the mechanisms to allow that to even happen.
Most important, you can't be promoted if you don't exist. I know, I'm sorry that, but you can't be promoted if you don't exist. So if you launch a club, or if a club starts in any given place, there needs to be a plan to make sure that this is a viable, whether promotion ever comes, it's a viable operation that isn't going to go anywhere. Right? That is so important here. And look, I've never launched a soccer team, so I can't tell you exactly what goes into it. I've seen enough come and go that I have a sense of, well, you better be really committed. You better be ready to lose some money. You better be connected to your community in ways that help you navigate the difficult times, because it's easy to start something. It's much harder to make it last. And when we talk 7 teams coming into USL League One, what we want are teams that last. I don't care what your badge is. Ultimately, what matters, and I said this on the Cosmos thing I did on Friday when you were out, Rob. Ultimately, the way that Cosmos badge looks doesn't matter to me. Ultimately, the name of the club doesn't matter to me. You can argue how important it is to have the right identity in your given town, in your given market. How much does it matter that this is something you can sell t-shirts for? I don't know. Like, obviously money is important, so you could argue that. But what's most important is that the people in your area who are going to buy tickets, because that's what it's about at this level, they're going to buy tickets. They want to come see you play. They want to be engaged in what you're doing. That's the most important thing. And if you get that part right, everything else will fall into place.
Yeah, to your point, is this Cosmos version the version of the Cosmos that stays around for 100 years? I mean, we shall see. What is this version? 2 or 3, maybe 3 or 4 for them. And is this the one that sticks? We shall see. Yeah.
One more comment. This is a reasonable thing to say. It doesn't matter, but the optics are the only thing anyone is talking about. All right. That, like, when it comes to the Cosmos, that's what we know right now. And again, when I talked about this on Friday, if you didn't watch Friday's show, there is a 40-minute video on the channel me talking about the Cosmos and engaging with the chat on that. And yeah, I talked about the image, I talked about the name, and I talked about how it felt weird that this is going to be a USL League One team with that history of Pele and Canali and all that. I talked about my discomfort with that. My discomfort shouldn't decide whether they use it, just my opinion about it. And hopefully we talk to people from the Cosmos in the near future on their show. I've reached out. We're going to try to get Eric Stover or Giuseppe Rossi or whoever wants to come on the show. We'll take whoever wants to come on the show from the Cosmos to talk about this. Like I want to do that. I want to engage directly because I don't want to make any presumptions about what they're doing. And I said this on Friday. The fact that Giuseppe Rossi, a North Jersey kid, is engaged with this, involved in this, directing this from the soccer side, that is huge. That is massive. And if they do the right things in connecting with their fan base, they should be okay. They're going to have hurdles just like everybody else, but that's the part that ultimately matters, right? And if in the beginning, because this is all they got, the name of the Cosmos gets them some heat, more power to them. If that's what they think they need to do to get themselves in a position to be successful, and I don't just mean winning soccer games, but existing as an American soccer team for a long time, then more power to them.
We shall see how that goes, and all these teams, how will they fare? But that should probably do it for today's episode of Morning Kick Around. It was a great show. Thank you for the active conversation going on in the chat. Let's keep it going beyond this. Of course, we're live here today and on demand on the Morning Kick Around YouTube channel. And today, a good encapsulation of what we're focused on here in Morning Kick Around. We, tipped our hat to the volunteers, keeping the game going. The summer soccer league season just about wrapping up, going in the postseason. So a lot of teams shuttering their doors for the next 9 months, and credit to all those putting their hard-earned time and hours into making those clubs happen. We also talked about the Club World Cup, the World Championship of Club Soccer, as they've donned themselves, did that. And thank you to our guest, Jack Grimse, amongst the variety of guests that we get on the show here, from influential content creators to club leaders and many more. Got interviews there. And then we're talking expansion here and badges and the new landscape of American soccer here. So encapsulation of Morning Kick Around. Thank you for being along on the ride. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, do so now. Let's cross over that 2,900 member or subscriber mark. And if you want to help out more, become a member, become an MK Ultra. You get access to the Discord server with great conversations. The conversation definitely keeps going there. Early access to videos. We make bonus content. And you're helping this show grow. And there's also coffee.com/morningkickaround, where we have some specific fundraiser goals for some specific projects. Thank you for anyone who has donated their hard-earned money, either on Ko-Fi or to the Morning Kick Around memberships. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and supporting any which way you're able to. I think that just about does it for the show today. Until next time.
One plug, one real quick plug. I know you're ready to get us out of here, and I appreciate that. One real quick plug. Going to be on Sounder at Heart with Jeremiah O'Shan, talking about soccer media and stuff. Recording that today, so be on the lookout for something with me on Sounder at Heart. Support Sounder at Heart, even if you're not a Seattle Sounders fan. They do incredible work covering American soccer from that Pacific Northwest perspective. All right, Rob, what were you saying?
I said until next time, everybody be safe, be careful, enjoy your soccer.